Hi everyone, this is Arpad from Starpath Academy, and this is another Midlight Live. I hope the mic is okay and everyone can hear me. So, tonight I'm planning to do a very cozy, short night stream to answer some of your questions and to have a little fun. So, let's do that. I have my tea with me and some water and you guys, so this should be fun. If anyone is in the chat, please let me know if you can hear me okay and the quality of the sound is good. So let's try that. I'll just assume. Okay, perfect. Shinjin, nice to see you again. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Awesome. So I'm heading to buymeacoffee.com/starpath academy and browsing for some questions that members have posted. But post your questions in the live chat, and if I can get to them, then that will be awesome. I'm gonna get to them. I'll make sure I grab a few from there as well. Okay. So let's take a look at some questions. Actually, let's start with this one. It's one of the latest questions. Is that hi Arpad? This is from Alex. Hi Arpad, I was hoping that you could expand on some comments from past videos about losing agricultural land during hyperinflation and what it was that caused that. It seems people say agricultural land is great asset, but still people can get caught out of it, out of the if they are not careful. What happened to your grandfather's other land from the farmer and the butcher story? So the farmer and the butcher story was a story shared with members a while back, actually, where I talked, I pulled, I guess, so a parallel between two people, my grandfather and the butcher from my hometown, right? And I mentioned this even on Maneko, an interview with Maneko, the butcher's story. So just to tie this in together with the last couple of videos I have done, right, about real estate, gold, some other assets, and how much they appreciate or are undervalued during hyperinflations. Probably one of the best things that you could have had in order to make money during the hyperinflation of the 90s in Romania would have been agricultural land that you can develop. You have the tools for it, you have the team, the know how, and you can withstand some shortages, for instance, fertilizer or that sort of stuff. So, as long as you have all of that well rounded, so now you can see it's not really agricultural land, it's agricultural business. That would have been probably the best thing to have during the 90s, because usually in hyperinflations, the cost of food is the one that is skyrocketing, right? And the cost of imports, because your country can no longer pay for that. So, having that and being able to provide, especially city dwellers, with food and basic necessities, you would have made a lot of money, or actually wealth in this case, right? So probably that would have been the best thing to have. Now he does mention that people have trouble keeping it, but usually it's some other factor that plays in. It's not just that you have the land and you can work it, right? In our case, in the 90s, we did have some land, right? Eventually, some of that had to be sold off, but the problem was we didn't have equipment. We didn't have equipment, and agricultural land doesn't actually appreciate that much during hyperinflation because there's always more land than farmers and people who are willing to work on it. So there will be land, and there will be more land than hardworking people even then, I would assume. So it doesn't appreciate that much, but it doesn't lose value. And what we did with some of the land, especially the aunt that I've been telling you about, which was actually my grandmother's sister, right? She rented the land out to people who had equipment and they worked on that land. So she could actually, survive off of that. Now, granted, she didn't make much, right? The people who had the equipment and grew stuff on the land, they made bank, right? But you have to have also a network how to distribute your whatever you're producing to people and like city dwellers and everywhere else that where people are in need, but not just like don't even think about too much about the money. Isn't that what you should do? Like help other people, especially people in need. So yeah. Yeah, so why my grandfather couldn't keep the land? So when I told the story, the in the video, the members video about the butcher and the farmer, was that story was not the hyperinflation of the 90s. That was the hyperinflation of the Pengu, which was 19. It ended in 1946. Yes, I believe so. I have to look it up. But 1945, 1946. So that was the hyperinflation of the Pengu, which is a Hungarian currency, which got inflated actually multiple times of the Weimar inflation. Even the Zimbabwe inflation wasn't that bad compared to the Pengu. So any savings that he had, he lost during that time, but he actually had land and he did have some equipment. So technically he lost the previous savings, but he was able to remake some of that during the hyperinflation because he was providing services and he was actually investing in heavy machinery during that time. The reason why he lost that was actually Transylvania being annexed to Romania after that period, right after during the Second World War or after the Second World War, and Romania becoming a communist country. So he lost the land because of confiscation. It wasn't hyperinflation. Land was there after hyperinflation. He lost it during communism because land got collectivized during communism, and that's how he lost it. So, well, he was actually forced to work on the land still, but he was not able to keep any of his work. The work and the fruits of the labor, everything what got collective. It was for the collective, right? They were actually starving to death, my grandfathers. Eventually, neighbors had to help in order to for my family to survive, even though he was a farmer and had land, quote unquote land. So that is why he lost the land, right? Eventually, well, many people lost it. Pretty much everyone has. Half of the country, half of the Romanian people are still at. They're still like are like in a fight with the Romanian government, in legal fights with the Romanian government in order to get some of the land back. And they did get some, even we got some parcels back, but not even close to the land that we lost during that time, right? So that is why land was lost. So you have, even on the interview with Lynette Zhang, I told you that these things usually happen with major political shifts, and you have to watch out for that as well. So when we're talking about even about real estate, and you guys are talking about, oh, the market can come down, or this can come down, or with leverage you can lose everything. Yes, of course, everything has its own risk, right? And even this is in that deck of cards, that maybe the huge political shift will happen and everything gets confiscated, and you could be starving. So maybe you should do like the butcher did. if you want to if you want to have if you want to know that, then listen to that story, right? Because my family lost multiple times everything, or pretty close to everything, uh, during the 30s. Then this was, I guess, the 40s, 50s, and then the 90s, right? And sometimes I talk about stories from my father's side. This was my father's father. And then sometimes I talk about stories from my mother's side, usually my grandmother, my mother's mother, and my mom's aunt, basically. So it's kind of, I know it's kind of confusing because I want to tell a lot of stories, and then through interviews some of these come up, but um, yeah, and they're all only a bit stories here and there. But I really need to get that book out. So thank you for everyone who have supported that project so far. Right. So I hope that answers some of your questions, but it's really not the land, but the agricultural activity, the agricultural business that does well during hyperinflation, as long as there are no political shifts that would take it away from you. So that's probably the best thing to do during hyperinflation, to be able to provide food for the rest of the people. Now, again, there are other businesses that do well, but those, I would say, those are out of the hand of ordinary people. Like one business, that energy, right? Energy exporters do very well, like natural gas, right? Or like in our case in Romania, the fertilizer plant, because we didn't have to import natural gas. So the raw material to make the ammonia based fertilizer was there. So that company did very well, because now with hyperinflated Romanian lei, they could export fertilizer to other countries. Interestingly enough, I just heard just 2 days ago or 3 days ago, that same plant, which is a huge plant, very successful. I even owned stock at some point in that company. They shut down 2 days ago. So they survived hyperinflation during Romania. It was built by the communists, the original plant, or during communism, of course, not by the communists, but during communism. And it survived that. It survived hyperinflation and the 90s. And just 2 days ago, they paused production because of gas prices being so high. Looks like, I don't know. Looks like it's they can't get like gases in, natural gas, right? So it's, I don't know, if that is not a bad sign. I don't know what to say. Yeah, and the yeah. So let's make this a cozy stream with a lot of stories. um, so regarding that plant, let me see. Yes, a lot of. I mean, I tend to know a lot of history about that, because it was eventually sold to Turkish investors, then bought out by the investors from Switzerland. I think they still own it. But that plant they wanted to shut down that plant for like they weren't really following like all these green policies and so on, but they would be paying all of the fines, and they would still be making money. And they made a lot of money when Romania was not part of the EU, and they didn't even have to care about all these again, I guess, green policies about environment and friendliness and so on. So a lot of external forces, let's just say Hungarian American billionaires that you know very well, wanted Georgie boy wanted to shut that plant down. and he wanted it shut down. My assumption is to buy up all the shares, and he couldn't. And he couldn't because the Turkish guy was too smart. And but on that side, I know for a fact the Turkish guy had to, whenever he left the house, his house, he had to leave in basically three cars left the house, and nobody knew other than the driver in which car he was in. So that was the level of, and of course, security detail and so on. So that was the level of security that he had to go through because he was not complying with orders from Georgie boy, who I'm thinking you know who I'm talking about. I don't want to say his last name, but anyway, yeah. So that plant currently is now pausing production because of high prices. Okay, so back to the question. I think agricultural production is probably the one of the best things that is available for the average person, because all of these other interesting factories, they will all suffer from breakages in the supply chain, right? Unless you can 100% supply everything from your country, most likely it will go bust. It will just it will get bankrupt, and it will default. Any company, any factory. The ones that didn't were really producers of raw materials or miners and that sort of stuff. That they didn't, but even they had trouble because it took energy. But back then, Romania still had oil wells, definitely, especially the Black Sea and that part of Romania still had oil wells. I don't know if they have it now. I mean, they have it, but they would not even be near enough to supply it internally. Even then, like gas shortage was there. All right, let me see another question. Another thing, as another question I'm reading, another thing I would like to explore is you mentioned often very valuable industrial assets were sold merely for the price of the factories as scrap metal near the end of hyperinflation. Could you elaborate on this phenomenon? Also, is it related to large office buildings, hotels, airports, and factories? Yes, I guess this was in another members video where I talked about how to get rich during hyperinflation, part two. I know part one is a public video. Part two was more in detail about these industrial assets and how people could purchase it up. And this was definitely there, but again, the best deals were picked up by the corrupt politicians of Romania during that time. And it was I believe I give some examples in that video, but this was more available for average investors as well, especially for buildings of hotels and the land of factories that kind of went bust and eventually crumbled. That was there. However, the best deals were picked up by the German investors who were hand in hand with the Romanian corrupt politicians of the time, who are still in charge in many regions of Romania. Let's just be fair. So, yes. Well, I think hotels and anything in the hospitality business goes bankrupt first. I mean, you kind of get the idea now after the pandemic or whatever that those don't fare well. Now because of lockdowns, but back then it was just people didn't have the money to travel. So like all the hotels would go bankrupt almost immediately, with the exceptions of very few who were connected with, again, these politicians, but they were also able to keep them up because there were foreign investors coming in. So these would be like the fanciest hotels that would still host diplomats from out of the country, investors and that sort of stuff, and they would have high security detail and so on. So those, of course, didn't go bankrupt, but many other things did. So like all of these resorts, I mean, they were nothing. After a while, it just breaks down. The buildings break down. You think that the buildings are there, but not really. After a couple of years, from graffitis and homeless people and who knows what, it just breaks down completely. So once you had a beautiful resort in Romania, even during communism, it was there, and after that is just the trees and the hills that remain. But the zones are still nice, and probably the infrastructure around it was still there, and you could pick those up very cheap. And a lot of people from Turkey and Germany and Western Europe did, and they did come and invest, in the sense that they bought them up cheap, very, very cheap. Factories, as I said before, they crumbled pretty much. It was really the ruins of factories by the end of hyperinflation. Some of the buildings, of course, remained. Communism loved concrete. They always had these brutalist structures, and so one of the advantages of that was everything made of concrete, and some of that concrete was still there and still there today, probably. But the factories got emptied out as soon as the supply chains broke. It's if you're producing, let's say, washing machines or whatever. Well, now you have chip shortages, that type of shortages. It was still there back in the 90s, so you can imagine, and everything just stops. So that's another thing. Like, people ask about stocks a lot. Well, what do you think stocks would do of these companies? Everything breaks down. But yeah, so they were sold pretty much at the value of the land, and the when the businesses were bought by foreign investors, it was bought by at the price of the scrap metal inside, basically. Yeah. And sometimes it was actually working machinery, but like, if there's no one to work it, you cannot pay the workers, and there's no supplies coming in, it's worth less than melt value, because you have to melt it down, right? But of course, some of these machinery got sold off to other investors. And yeah, I tell the story of, in the video How to Get Rich, part 2, another member video, I believe, how my father tried to acquire some equipment, but again, I mean, he didn't have any political connections or so on with local governments. So you can imagine, like, how all of these politicians will take advantage of the situation, who are already probably hand in hand with foreign entities, let's say. I mean, you can imagine what's happening now. It will just be more out in the open in a possible hyperinflation situation in the US. And you can probably guess who would be coming in, buying up the factories and your labor at not cents, but micro cents on the dollar. But to be fair, some of that, because everything crumbled so fast and everything was available so fast, some of that, if you had availability to purchase, then especially hotels or some of those industries that were not, the politicians and the foreign investors were not too interested in, you can pick those up. And that's how I would say the biggest money was made during hyperinflation. um yeah, yeah, purchasing up distressed assets. All right, let's take a couple of questions from the live now. And please like the video. Let's just say this: if we get to 30 likes, I'll take questions from live. No, I'll just take questions anyway. Just like the video. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Shinjin, for joining again. Thank you, everyone, for confirming that the audio is good. Yeah, I know. I wasn't planning to go on live, but I made a good tea, and I thought, why not enjoy it with you guys? So, no, I don't have a PO box yet set up for something, but that's a good idea. I just Toffel Turkey 7. Well, maybe do you have one? Would you like me to send something? I was thinking about sending some gifts for Christmas for my followers and subscribers. I have some ideas. I'm thinking about, but I don't want to. I want to give out some silver, just like because that's trendy and fun. But I also want to give out something that you just can't buy by yourself. Like I'm thinking about, but I also don't feel good about sending food or edibles because I was thinking about sending out some Hungarian paprika, the powdered red paprika, which we have plenty of, and it's an award-winning paprika, and also some mint, for tea, dried mint leaves that I'm thinking about sending out. But again, it's like food or whatever, so I don't know if I should send that out. And then silver. So I'll think of something. Definitely, if we reach like 10,000 subscribers, I'm planning to send out some silver. So share the channel and make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification. So, but yeah, next year I'll probably have a PO box or something like that. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Greetings from Belgium. Greetings, Nevada. All right. In hyperinflation, do persons who practice law do well? I think it depends. Like civil disputes, I don't think so much. So that's a question from Benoit. Benoit, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry about that. So I don't think, because people will not have too much money left over to settle civil stuff. They handled it in different ways. However, regarding real estate stuff, like who gets to own what, I mean, you can imagine when people are in distress and then they found, a grandfather who didn't have a will or something like that. People fought over like that things. Even yeah, I'm not going to tell that story, but I know for a fact this happens. Also, acquisitions. So, like as I was saying about factories and that sort of stuff. So the law kind of has to, like, you will need paper trails even during hyperinflation. So making those paper trails in ownership and that sort of stuff, they did very well because there were a lot of these foreign investors who hired usually their own lawyers, but then also local lawyers, and then made everything smooth out with the politicians who had their own lawyers. I bet, so those types of people will have a field day, I bet. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. But I could probably just ask that question from someone in Romania, how did they do during that time. Yeah. JK Co, sorry, your message has been retracted. I know your name. Thank you for being here, but looks like YouTube deleted it. So please try again. Taylor Stanley says the US isn't Romania. Certainly isn't. So we are the economic center of the world. I think we still are in GDP for sure. Do you have a question? I love how. Okay, yes, he does. I love your channel, but your attempts to somehow relate Romania to the US is absurd. This is why your view count dropped through the floor. Yeah, well, I'm not sure why it dropped. Did it drop? Probably. Cheers. Yeah, I don't necessarily compare Romania to the US. I compare the suffering of people of Romania during a hyperinflation to a possible scenario of suffering of people in the US in the future. That's what I'm trying to compare, which is, I think, is a fair comparison because we are all flesh and blood and spirit and so on. So I think that is a fair comparison and relatable. The economic stuff I don't necessarily compare because that was a local hyperinflation. And if you listened to some of the interviews that I did, that was, I think, even Lynette Zhang or a couple of other interviews I went to, they always ask this question: do you think this time is different? And I always say that Dune is the same, but it's always different. The situation is different, the global situation is different, and so on. So it has to be different. It absolutely has to be different because I think in new hyperinflation, when the current globalized economy would be global, right? Whereas that part was really just the parts of the ex-Soviet Russia, right? So of course it has to be different. There we actually had it good because a couple of countries to the west of us, you had Western Europeans had flourishing economies, so we could use their currencies as a substitute for our currencies. And people did complain, but they could come in and invest, and we actually got foreign aid. If there would be a more synchronized hyperinflation, I think, to be honest, things could be much worse, much worse. So but aspects of the hyperinflation and aspects of the economy can be compared. But yeah, I mean, maybe you should share the video more and ask questions. All right. Okay. Let's see. I guess you guys went on a debate. Hi from Colorado Springs. Was looting a problem for people with food? I mean, it was, but it wasn't that bad. So, right. Back then, everyone knew someone from his close family, right? His close family to that they can go to who actually had a patch of land. And that was our case as well, right? My grandmother had a patch of land. My grandmother's sister had a patch of land. On my other side of the family also had their patch of land that was somewhat worked on. They at least had some gardens. They at least had something to start off. You know, some of them grew animals, raised animals, and some of them grew potatoes, corn, or that sort of stuff. So yes, there was a food crisis. Yes, people looted, but to be honest, after a while, there's not much to loot. You cannot loot for 7 years. You know, you can loot for a month or two, and even that gets dangerous after a point. It's like high risk, no return type of deal. So, of course, I know it could be very different here. However, at that point, it's just easier to join someone and ask if you can work for them for food, because at least you're not risking your life for, you know, a couple of sacks of potatoes or something like that. So I don't think looting was too much of a problem. And then we were a communist country, already very poor. And what would you loot? You know, there wasn't much to loot from the get-go. So that type of crime was not that bad. The crime was mostly in the cities and had to do with possible transactions regarding money changing from Romanian lei to euros, or gold and Romanian lei or something like that, where there would be of this activity or this type of activity. So there would be some crime there for sure. However, these eventually the guys who did the changing of the money, or the black market, had its own way of protecting itself, and they had better protection than what the looters would have, so to say. So it kind of leveled out, right? There was crime, and there was a spike in crime that I talked about, but it wasn't that bad to the point of what could happen, I would say. If you have any specific questions, then I can do a better answer, hopefully. Was it more dangerous for women? Well, yes, of course. I mean, but it was Romania was a different culture back then in the 90s. So I don't think. I mean, it was dangerous. It was people never wore jewelry for one. Women and children were not really out after dark. That type of deal, and but random attacks didn't really happen just out of hate or anything like that. It was more an opportunistic attack of people mugging, or groups of people mugging other people. But it was almost always understood that they are there to grab your cash or valuables. They were never, almost never, out for your life, because technically, I mean, even the muggers would be from your own city or other parts of the city, and sometimes you would actually recognize like who they are, or it was kind of a weird situation, because it was the town that the towns in Romania are not like Los Angeles or New York or that size, right? So there was definitely more danger for women and children, or even the elderly. However, this new people accommodated what you should do, what you should not do, what you should wear, what you should not wear, in order to mitigate the changes, and the crime, and accommodate to the changes, I wanted to say. And eventually it was known which are the bad parts of town, and was known that if you are going somewhere to make a barter or transaction, you would not go alone. You would take two of your maybe brothers or uncle or father or someone, and we had ways how to get through town, but it wasn't that bad. At least I didn't feel that bad, because well, I was also quite young, so I didn't quite possibly understand the gravity of the situation. But for me, it felt like I thought that was life. I didn't like think about this is more dangerous than any other parts of the world. Of course, it was different, but to be honest, I felt that there's more danger in parts of Los Angeles today than there was danger back in Romania back then, or Chicago. Pick your place. Okay. Hi, Arpad. Would it be safer to flee the Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe during hyperinflation in developed countries? I think so. I mean, it definitely. I think Asia will feel it differently than Western Europe and the United States and the westernized world, because in order for depending on how much the country will suffer, that depends a lot on what is actually being produced in the country, like because import is no longer available, and if you are not unable to import a lot of things, then there will be lack, and when there's lack, then there's trouble, basically. And of a lot of these countries, as long as they have food production and even factories and running factories, but also some way of organizing how to um, make the supply chains work within the country, at least without importing a lot, those countries will fare much better. That's my guess, you know. So I think if you can pick countries like that, that would be good. Also, countries that are rich in natural reserves. So thinking about Russia or who knows what, you know, those countries have natural reserves. And as I said, that was always easy to export, and there was always another country that needed it. So I think it softened the blow for countries like that, you know. And to be honest, Romania was still a natural rich country, but yeah. But also the social strata is different, and I mean, if countries have political problems now and huge political problems, then I think it will just get worsened, you know, during major calamities. So I think if you take a country like Poland or one of other countries, some other countries that are more intact politically, most likely they will be able to figure out a way how to go through it as a country. Whereas if a country is already having issues politically and major divides happening, then you could see that that gap will only be wider, unfortunately, because that's what they want. You know, I don't think people want that, but that's certainly in the interest of someone, and they will push it harder during those times. However, just at least relocating into states that are more capable of handling, let's say, the pandemic when it comes to the economy. I think those have shown the capability of going through hard times, and I think those will fare better. I think that's my take on it. Yeah. Sparrow says, "Hi Arpad, I'm so grateful for all your efforts to help us." Thank you. Whoops. I think something just jumped. So grateful for your efforts to help us all over the world. I saw you on ITM Trading with Nat Zhang and it was helpful. Well, thank you very much. Yes, I really enjoy listening to Lynette Zhang and ITM Trading. They do provide really good historical charts, data, and everything. So, and good information and just everything. Oh, looks like we got a super chat. Thank you, Taylor. $100. Thank you very much. He says, "Thank you for your work. Please stay true to your values. You have inspired a fire in me that I will never forget to the rest of my life. You are a wise man." Well, thank you very much, Taylor. Yeah, well, I'm very humbled, and you're very generous. So thank you very much. What can I say? Stay true to your values. I mean, that's what I try to do every day. For sure, it's not easy. I think people get distracted of topics and trends and money even sometimes. I think one of the first interviews that I had was with a stacker, a silver stacker. And yeah, even there I said, like, if there's one person that will sit down and listen to this video, then I think it's worth saying. If I would take the time, right, with my coffee to sit down, maybe of course less, maybe just once a month, that I could sit down and talk to you. Like, why does it count more if you have thousands of followers or 100,000 of followers? If you're doing it in order to share, you know, does it really count? Because it could mean that you are making an impact, a bigger impact, if you just inspire one person instead of being sort of a background noise of someone who's listening to a podcast but not really caring. You could have tens of millions of those followers. Does it really matter? Does it count? You know? And that's what I said to someone who was, I know I might have busted his bubble a little bit, but he was saying that how he, the young person in IT actually, and he was saying like how he wants to go and make this new app and change the world, and then um, inspire people and so on. And I understand, like, yes, we all want to do that, and everybody is going or used to go to Silicon Valley to do that, right? And then I thought about it, like, does it really matter, or do you really want is like maybe have a couple of kids and then inspire them, you know? And that might have actually a bigger effect down the line, because if you're thinking about it, you're changing your family history. If you're sitting down with your kids every day and talking with them and actually raising them instead of letting the television raise them, that might have such a big, like, butterfly effect 10 generations down the line, that you may be one of those, people, your great grandsons will change the world because of you sat down and talked with your own children. So I don't know what exactly means that you be stay true to your values, but being honest and doing it for the right reason, I think, is the one. Yeah. But thank you very much. I mean, I always appreciate it. And it's good to have you guys as subscribers and followers, because it allows me to do more of this and less of other stuff that I need to do, because I have a family, I have jobs, I have projects that I'm working on, and everything takes time away. But as long as, there would be one person that would listen to me and find it useful, I would still sit down at least once a month to have a chat of 20 minutes for sure. So thank you very much. I know that was a tangent, but it's a live video. It's already midnight or half past midnight. Nobody cares, right? We're enjoying ourselves. So okay. Question: were people shocked when the currency crashed? Not, I mean, it was almost expected, but I would have to another super chat. Okay, thank you. It's another super chat from Taylor. Thank you very much. I'll read your question immediately. I want to finish the question I was reading. So, what were people? Um, Were people scared or shocked? Not really, because I think by the end of the 80s, this is, of course, me speaking the experiences of my father and my mother. By the end of the 80s, they could feel that change was coming. Change already was happening to neighboring countries like Slovakia and Hungary, and communism was easing there already. Because of a lot of Western influence and music and how everything was being changed. And Romania was steadfast on staying communist for forever, from what Ceausescu wanted. But even then, there was capitalism creeping in to communism, just like how in China, is it really communist anymore, at least economy wise, right? So people knew that there was a change coming, so something was expected, and the currency was already inflating in the 80s, and it was kind of understood that you should not keep large amounts of money because it will inflate, but nobody actually thought that it could happen this fast. So, and people were already suffering during communism, so everybody had their own ways of getting around without money or bartering or that sort of stuff, and making sure that you have enough relatives and connections. But nobody expected the sudden change, so that way they were shocked, because there were major societal changes that happened. So sort of like if tomorrow the dollar would hyperinflate, or let's say the euro or some currency that we all trust today hyperinflates, would you be shocked? Yes, but it would be also somewhat understood now because everybody now through the media understands inflation. Hyperinflation was trending like a couple of months ago on Google chart. It was like 100 out of 100. So yes, it would be a shock, but it would not be like unexpected. It would be something like that. So I don't know if I can answer this question. I would probably have to bring on uh, older people than me to kind of to make sure like what they did feel. I only got this from my father and my mother and my relatives and what I understood from it. And to be honest, at that point, I didn't really care. I was just young. It was life for us, and we just lived. So thank you for another super chat, Taylor. You're exactly right. You changed my life. You made a post about me and my family some time ago. It did change my life, and that's where this money comes from. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I'm not sure if I remember, but whenever if I write something or do these posts, I try to be honest. I mean, as much as possible. And did say like, it, it might not be the best selling thing, but that's fine. That's fine. We don't have to. We don't all have to be like super popular. I mean, it would be nice. I hope, hopefully, if I'm especially sharing valuable information, you seem to think that. Um, but yeah, I love doing it, to be honest. So I love talking to people. I love answering questions. Um, I love I love the little stories of ordinary people, and don't take ordinary in the bad sense. Like just like regular people who are not picked up by big media, or they're not famous in a way, because I feel that there's so many lost stories. They say that whenever a person dies, there's like a whole dictionary that dies with him, or a library that dies with him. So I don't know. I mean, there's so much stories in our lives that could be distilled into knowledge and wisdom, and they're never passed down. If I think about it, just how much stuff that my grandfather knew how to do with his hands, but maybe me not being interested. Well, I didn't quite know my grandfather's that much, but my grandmother's, right? Me not being interested in how to do it, and it never got passed down. So, and that's the similar with my wife, because now we have to relearn how to do stuff, even just like food items. We do remember, okay, this is the sauerkraut that we used to make, and then, but I still have to look it up, and then do it that way. And there's this huge disconnect that we are not listening to our parents, our neighbors, and just random people, because they're not picked up by, they're not on a pedestal, right? So I think I like that fact. I like people. I like trying to understand their thought processes and where they come from. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what I wrote, but I'm really glad you found it helpful, and I hope it was a change for the better. But it's honestly what you make of it. Maybe the same post would have not touched someone that much, and I think it's you. It's all you. Everything in life is just a mirror. I'm a mirror to you guys, and everything else is a mirror for me. So, because everything that you look at is only as much as you can understand from it. That's what I'm saying. What your consciousness allows to perceive it as, right? So like a chess game is totally different for someone who is looking at it and not understanding what they do. It means something else who's someone who's enjoying it, and someone who's playing like at a chess master level. That's life, right? Thank you very much. I do appreciate I do appreciate all your all your super chats. I do want to say, like, I have never received super chats like this, and now you just super chatted me again. I hope you have the funds to do it. I don't expect high super chats from people. I mean, it's nice, don't get me wrong, but I want to make sure that you take care of your family first. I'll jump to your next super chat questions, but I also want to grab some other. Okay, it's Merry Christmas. Indeed, Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Hey, I really appreciate people who are listening to me, and you. I mean, you guys make it worthwhile, for me to do this. That's it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy reading your comments. Let me grab some other questions. Yeah, let me see. I like to give back, so I'm thinking like always give back at least 10% or something. So I'm thinking, yeah, let's do silver giveaway, and yeah, funded by Taylor. Let's do a silver giveaway end of the year, whether we reach 10,000 subscribers or not. Okay, now it has been funded by Taylor, so let's do at least a couple of silver coins or something. I don't know, and then we'll think about some other cool stuff. But thank you, Taylor. If you have questions or whatever, I can do my best to answer them. I hope that inspires you guys or girls. It's just what I believe in, and I might not be correct. So always know that. Don't fall in love with stocks. Don't fall in love with theories too much, or even people that you follow. And I'm saying fall in love with the ideas that they share, not the people, of course, because it's just you in point in time in history, and in 20 years you'll be a different person, and I'll be a different person, and you might not like that, so keep an open mind. But if something inspired you in one way or another, then I'm really glad. So thank you, and I'm glad you shared that with me. Wow, now I feel like I should definitely just take on at least 10 questions. Okay, so let's do this. I'm asking you, if you have questions, type capital letters question. You have, or have an @ sign and my name or something, so I can find it, because you guys have also like nice conversations in between you. So yeah, thank you, Taylor, for your generosity. My family thinks things will be back to normal. I think maybe they will try to start a war, kind of a tradition in the US. Yes, I mean, I don't know whoever said this, but there is the when everything else fails, they take you to war. So I believe it's in the decks, it's in the cards. It's probably the worst outcome for everyone, with the exception of few, of course. So it's in the cards. I really hope we never get there. Whether it would be another just a small country or a big country, it doesn't matter. It does take off your mind off of everything else. And if nothing else, that could be a reason why they take you to war. And I tell this a couple of times a year, that think about European countries between, let's just say, the 1600s and 1800s, or 1400s and 1800s. The borders have moved. Some small countries got incorporated, like Germany was different until Otto came along and united Germany. So some countries did disappear, some countries did appear. But the borders, when these monarchs appeared, they didn't move that much, right? And the Habsburgs are famous for saying something: you should marry for money and not fight wars for money. But they still fought wars. I'm just saying that all these monarchs in Europe, they were all somewhat related and interrelated and second cousins or wife of someone, So why did they go to war? Why did they always go and wage war with other second cousins? So you have to think about that really hard, right? Why? Why did they would have their own, the best of their men, especially young men at a certain age, capable to fight and wield arms? Why would they send them off against their cousin to die? And the border or whatever land was acquired was not that much, to be honest. Well, it's clear, right? They wanted to get rid of them. It's calling. It's like they want to make sure that the most capable are sent off to die for some idiotic reason instead of staying home and changing the country. But that changed country, maybe there would be no monarch, or there would be a different monarch or something like that, right? It's easy. So wars are also fought for that reason alone, to expel the most capable that would be a threat to you. Now, that doesn't mean that you should not fight for your country. That doesn't mean that you should not have love for your country, especially love for your own countrymen. Absolutely. And defend that country. But you have to think about, like, when some things happen, you have to think cui bono, who benefits, right? And you only know that after the war, to be honest. They take a look at that and see what changed and who benefited, right? And think about every country, not just the US. When they wage a war, who benefits? And then you find why the reason behind the war. But also, mostly, it's also to keep your mind off of things that you should not focus on. So I don't know. I really hope we can get back to normal. The U.S. is still a major power. If anyone can get back on their feet, I think it's still the U.S. But we'll see what happens. But I think just how you believe that your house will be still intact tomorrow or the after 2 weeks or 4 weeks, that doesn't mean that you should not buy fire insurance, right? That doesn't mean that you should not have a fire extinguisher. So when we have plans or when we prepare, we doesn't necessarily want something to happen. We want maybe nothing to happen, but we still want to have a insurance policy or somewhere to fall back to. Right. Okay, let's see if any questions came in. So Dr. James says, my family and I escaped from communist Soviet Union when I was young after it collapsed. I'm considering of going back to Russia given the situation. What do you think? I think some of these Eastern European countries have a huge appeal now. And don't just believe me, look at some trends of where Germans and people from the UK are migrating or moving. I think the Hungarian prime minister said that they see a lot of influx of, and he was joking, of course. They call them refugees, but from the West. And he said there will be a wave of refugees from the West back into Eastern Europe. And it's already happening. And to be honest, it starts off like some German elderly couple or someone buying a lake house on Lake Balaton or something like that. And they think that they will be there every couple of summers. They rent out the place, if not. And usually after a year or half a year, they just move there and live there, and they sell off their German house because there's liberty of movement in the EU, and a lot of people do that. What you have to understand, and I'm trying to be honest here, what you have to understand that these smaller countries or post or communist countries still have that communistic flavor of local corruption and corruption of high places. So how should I put this so I don't say the stuff I shouldn't say? It might be much harder to run a business, open a business, because you will have to deal with things you don't have to deal in the West. Because in the West, you don't have to deal with paying off the men of the local mayor or something like that. Or you don't have to deal with, and this is a story I know for sure, I mean, from first hand, second hand, as first and second hand. If you have a business and someone else's business and you are competing in the same zone, but he has an uncle who's a local politician, then you might have more visits from the local offices to see if you are up to regulations. And eventually they might find something that you're not up to regulations, and it will be much harder for you to keep your business. And that type of stuff does not yet exist in most of the Western countries, with the exception of a couple of states in the US and a couple of cities in the US and in higher places in Western countries. Unfortunately, in Eastern European countries, it exists also in lower places, and it might affect you because you know that this happens in Western countries, but in high places. And you probably know the politicians and so on. But when that happens to the local cops, when that happens to the local politicians, life is much more harder because you have to know how to manipulate the web. If you don't plan to open businesses or change the world in Eastern Europe and you fit into this web, it will be much easier for you. I don't think that that is the right thing to do. I'm saying it's easier to do. And a lot of people who go back and fit in the sense that they don't try to change a lot politically and so on, they do very well in Eastern European countries, especially if they also have income and other stuff from the country that they left. That, I think, I'm very honest with you. You might not agree with me, you might agree with me. That is my opinion, right? And that's fine. But I think they are getting better. Like it's much better now than it was 10 years ago or it was 15 years ago. So when I was there and when I was living there, it was way worse in some cases. So I think you might have a different experience. But I would say live there at least a year before you move there. And that's true with everything. If you move to a different state, or I would say like a year, live there before you permanently make the decisions to make it permanent. But usually now I have many cases of especially Germans and British people move to Hungary after a half year and they just say that's enough. I feel much safer here, and so on and so forth. So you have to be your own. You have to make your own decisions. Okay. Taylor, thank you very much. It's really more than enough. Thank you very much. Well, they say you should never say no to money because it's it's just energy, right? If you're spiritual in that way. But so thank you very much. But I just want you to know that I appreciate it. So let's take Taylor's question. Do you feel like you're a better and stronger person as a result of your hardship? How did it change you? Well, better is relative, right? I definitely know that I'm stronger in the sense that I would endure more. That I know for a fact. For better, it's relative. You would need to ask my friends or my relatives if I'm a better person before or after, right? But I do feel I have certain qualities that I really appreciate that would not be there because if I wouldn't have not went through the hardship that I went through, right? And when I talk about hardship, I know many other people from there who got it worse. So for me, when I talk about these things, I don't necessarily think about them as hardships. I mean, it was. Now looking back, I realize how bad it was. But back then, it felt like life. If you ask someone from Bolivia, how does it feel bad if you're going playing soccer barefoot somewhere in the mud or whatever? I mean, it's life for them. It's hard and it's very hard looking in, but it feels most like they have accommodated. It's not. I'm not saying don't help them. God no. I'm saying that that's how they will feel. Right. That's how I am as well. Now looking back, and just the other day, I think 2 days ago, I was alone. I was thinking, man, I hope I don't have to go back there. What we went through. I hope for my children, for my, I don't. I really. I kind of got like scared a little bit. I'm usually not scared, but that's like, God, I hope I don't have to go back there. It would be bad to start all over again, but it is what is. So it will happen what will happen. So, in order to better answer your question, my perspective is like you look at your life right now, and are you happy right now? And I'm not saying tomorrow in the sense like, oh, I have to pay this bill, or how you have to do this, you have to do that. Right now, if you look at what exactly is around you, this microphone, my tea, am I okay right now? And most likely, the answer will be yes, because all of the fears and everything negative is actually just up in your head. It's how you perceive things. It's either in the past or either in the future. Very few fears live in the present. Like, there could be physical situations that you are, of course, in a bad situation, but most of the times those situations are either in the past or either in the future. And you have to think about that because it's either something that happened to you or you're afraid of that will happen. And those two things will chain you for the rest of your life if you don't, or if you're not able to handle those. So, going back to the present right now, do I feel okay? And if the answer is to that is yes, then should you even care about what was in the past? Or hopefully from okay, you can make it, I feel really good. Every single day, you force yourself to feel really good and to be thankful for everything that you have right now. And if you look at that as a logical sequence, that everything that happened before had to happen exactly like that in order to get where you are right now, then what's the problem with the past? If you are happy right now, why do you even care about the past? In the sense, why does it still hurt you? It should not hurt you if you're good now. And I know, like, you have to go through the processes of forgiving everyone and so on. So I'm not saying like it's easy, but if you get to that place, and I feel like I'm at that place, so everything that has happened to me in the past, whatever happened to my country, whatever happened to my people, whatever happened to going back to the start of time, I have to be okay with that because I'm happy right now, right? So I don't know if I'm better or not, but I definitely feel stronger in the sense that whatever I have now, I can actually enjoy because I had so little back then. So compared to that time, I can now actually enjoy the little things that you guys call little things that for me are not little, right? To be able to wake up every morning and feel safe that you will have food, right? Or feel safe that you will be able to provide for your children, or you don't have to like open the door, crack the door, see if there's nobody in front of the door before you go out, right? Of the living space you live in. So that sort of stuff you take for granted because that's how you lived. And you should. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You should. You should be happy for the living in a good country. You should be happy and you should cherish it. Right. But for me, that's like a bonus. For me, that's like, hey, that's a good thing. And I don't have to live through this anymore. So I get to experience it. But I also feel that if it would ever happen, I would have an easier than I would have an easier time than some of you. Not everyone, but probably some. And hopefully, because of that, I would be able to help my friends, my family, and anyone who needs help. So I hope I answered that. Yeah. Other question. Let's see. And thank you for the super chat. Okay, do we have any more questions? Put my name or put the capital letters of a question, and then I'll read it. So Benoit, Benoit, let me know how to pronounce your name. Says, besides the closest cousins were the monarchs. Yes, so yeah, they were. I mean, I know they had beefs with each other, but you really have to think about that. All those wars every year, or 100-year wars and so on. Yes, there was definitely for land and so on, but it wasn't like they were living a bad life and they needed the other guy's land in order to be bigger monarchs or something like that, right? So there's definitely a multifaceted issue why the wars are going on, especially now, right? When everyone is like hating each other and in the news, but then in a G whatever summit, they all are buddies, and they can have talks and smile, right? So, and that's just the stuff that you actually see. You don't even know what's going on behind that. So hello from Norway. Yeah, I don't think I had anyone from Norway before. Arpad. So Michael says, Arpad, question above. Okay. Who do you think will end up more totalitarian, Eastern or Western Europe? People in Eastern Europe seem to be more awake, but governments might be even more heavy handed. A couple of years ago, I would have thought Eastern Europe would be less totalitarian. I think that hasn't changed much, but it has definitely changed in the sense that how Romania handled the sickness and the pandemic lockdowns. It was absolutely totalitarian, and I would have thought that Romania or the Romanian people had enough of totalitarian governments, but looks like many of them have probably forgot what they went through. The issue is that some restrictions you might agree, I might not, vice versa. But there are many restrictions that were absolutely moronic, that were in Romania and Hungary, which doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, so like, okay, I don't want to get into it. Let's not get into it because we should not get into it. But you can make rules that, okay, I accept your criteria, but then why is in your criteria an exception if you sit down and eat or something like that? But that doesn't make sense. Either I can accept, logically, I can accept your whole criteria as is, and then I say, okay, let's do it for X number of weeks or days. But then why is this exception? Or why? So there are totally moronic rules that tell you that the rule was not there because of what they said why it's there. It's there for something else. And then you can kind of, again, okay, who's benefit, which branches of government are benefiting. So that type of stuff, like I'm okay with processing your logic, having differences in opinions, but I cannot comprehend illogical stuff that you tell me it's logical and you know it's not logical. It's sort of like, who was it, Solzhenitsyn, who said like, they knew that we knew that they lied and we knew about it, or something like that. I'll have to look up that question. It's sort of like that. And I thought like Romania and the Romanian people had enough, but looks like they haven't, so especially their younger generation. So I don't know. I thought that Eastern Europe had it more together. Looks like they don't. And a lot of states in the United States were much friendlier, and even the ones that had actual rules implemented, you could sometimes feel like, okay, it's a rule, but it's somewhat a logical rule. But also, you should not have too much faith in people who make the rules. You should have faith in people who follow or don't follow the rules, and then make your assessment on that, in the sense that who you align with, right? Because I think more power is in the people than in the people who make the rules. I think they are still there because of consent. It's just we kind of forgot about that. Okay, another super chat. George Laszlo. Dr. George Laszlo says, like pretty much your work. Okay, you like my work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Laszlo. Thank you for the super chat as well. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll stay on for another 10, 15 minutes. I mean, my night was altered, especially by Taylor, but all of you guys, I mean, I'm really happy to be here. So yeah, I'll take some more questions, but I know it's late unless you're in Belgium. So bonjour de Montreal. I don't know French, but I know bonjour means good morning. So good morning. And I know, yes, James Hafford asks, and then Sparrow asks another question. Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions. So James Hafford asks, do you see, I don't even know if the YouTube algorithm picks up on this word at all or not, but do you see the surveys of sickness as a tool for governments to become more authoritarian? I mean, it certainly seems like that, right? I don't know if it is a tool, but it is being used as a tool. So it's definitely being used as a tool. And usually these things happen as like dry runs or tests, in order to see, kind of get the temperature of the population, where they would stand in case some bigger things would happen. Because as big as this thing was, you can always imagine worse things. So now, but that, in a good sense, you now also got the temperature of the population, and different population, different states, different countries, what they would be capable of doing if something worse would happen. So I think, and also me trying to look at the best things in everything, it was also a good wake-up call for people to see that things break down, and sometimes they break down even if we think the government has our best interest in their mind. And to be honest, you can definitely think that they have that. It's not like, or some governments or some bigger entities, you don't always have to be suspicious, but even then you can say that there will be things that the Fed will not be able to handle, or the central governments will not be able to handle. And these last 2 years, I think, changed the perspective of what people have and how they think. And that, at least to me, is a positive to all the negatives that happened and all the suffering and death and whatever happened, and it's very unfortunate. If you can get away with anything and look at positive, it's the I think a lot of people had a sort of an awakening that you need to rely on yourself, your friends, your family, your own skills, your own beliefs, and make more friends, instead of relying bigger systems, because bigger systems can have the best. They might want to have the best interest in for you, but they might still fail. So, Sparrow question: what is the best skill for a woman to have? Wow, I mean, I don't. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know necessarily why to differentiate. In the sense, like, if I say one of the best skills were auto mechanics, can that fit a woman or not? I'm not here to say it's not. But I think women have different capabilities, that men don't have. So if you want to, and vice versa, of course, if you want to capitalize on that as well, then you can definitely think about, like, nursing, or being a nurse, or helping medical stuff. I don't know, it's maybe just me, but whenever I go to a doctor, or I feel more comfortable with there's a woman there. I don't know, maybe that's very um, an ancient inbuilt embedded system in humans, that you trust women more. So I don't know. You really have to look at as a group of people, and how you can fit into that group, and what you can provide as a woman or as a man that it works best for the group. Because you have to think about more holistically than what is the best skill that I can have. To be honest, the women, at least in my family, especially thinking about my grandmother, was the one who calmed everyone. You know, like, she had that capability of being calm in the worst of times, and that has to do with a lot of things. But one of the things, was that she went through worse times, right? Yeah, she was telling when the story of when she was pregnant with my uncle, who was the oldest in the family. And it was during the World War, the Second World War, and the house was occupied by soldiers, and they had to. She was pregnant, and the family plus the neighbors, and the neighbors did not prepare, and my family, her family, she was a young woman, a pregnant woman, and they did prepare. They even dug a bunker. They had a bunker uh, on the land, and you had to go out of the house and up on the hill, and the side of the hill they had a bunker. But guess what? All of the neighbors knew that they had a bunker. So she was pregnant, and all of the neighbors came into the bunker to the point that she could not breathe, and she had to leave the bunker because she was pregnant, that she could not stand so many people just crammed into the bunker. The house was occupied by soldiers, and she went on top of the bunker and sat down and was watching from the hillside, was watching bombs falling, right? And her father came out as well, so she wouldn't be alone. My great grandfather, so my great grandfather, my grandmother on my mom's side, they were sitting on top of the bunker because neighbors went into the bunker, so they didn't have space, and they were looking at bombs falling on the town, right, in the night sky. And she said it was peaceful. So Women are powerful, man. Yeah. So make of that what you want. But look at a group. Take good internal look at what you're good at, and go on that road, because you will find definitely more things that you would imagine. Let me see. There was another question right here. I'm sorry if I skipped. It's getting busy. Yeah, have my name or the capital letters question. You know, mathematically, is it possible for the USA to hyperinflate within 7 years? It's hard to say. Mathematically, it is possible, but it's very rare that it happens to um, reserve currency. So the issue is with that, as bigger political shifts and troubles are happening, there's always a run for the currency that is most trusted. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but I believe that there will be a run for the dollar. And that's why I say there might be a short deflationary period before we hyperinflate. But also, if you look at some of these countries that are on the edge of the US empire, the edge of the Western empire, and they are failing, Turkey, Lebanon, pick your next one, whatever. And as they are failing, the people in the countries and the countries themselves will look for the center of the empire, what their currency is, and will try to accumulate it. So the empire, the center, has this padding that they can take advantage of that they can inflate internally, and that is still being sucked up by the edges of the empire. So that's why I say, like, kingdoms and countries like Romania fall differently than empires do. Empires fall on the edges first, and it will reach the center, just like in Rome. But up until the last weeks, a lot of people will still be blind to the fact that the empire is falling, and they will be still drinking wine on the top of the rooftops, right? So it's hard to say what will happen in 7 years. But another thing is that right now the monetary system is very different than what was in like Rome or in the time of the Soviet fall, right? Right now we they can issue US dollars right into your bank account like that, right? To the thousands. It's just a number. It's just typed out. They don't have to print it. They have no physical barriers. They have no barriers at all. Everything is digitized. With now rolling out CBDCs and that sort of stuff. So it used to be that there would be a run for the currency, right? Now, if we get to CBDCs before hyperinflation might never happen, because they can also suck the money out of your digital wallet, right? So they have complete control over how much you are able to spend. They can shut. So hyperinflation is a run from currency. It's a loss of trust, and you want to spend it, but they can just block. Okay, nobody can spend money on Tuesdays from now on. So they can't stop hyperinflation with CBDCs. It's just, is that a world do you want to live in? That's another question. And if not, and if enough people decide they don't want to live, then CBDCs might not hyperinflate, but we might go into a world situation where nobody cares if there are any CBDCs, or they don't even care if there's electricity or not. So very hard to say. At this point, my best guess is that we will continue as we are doing right now until something breaks. So I'm looking at, so 7 years, I think we might actually have a deflation within 7 years instead of hyperinflation, unless before the CBDCs are issued, there is a loss of faith in the current government and the current currency. If there's a loss of faith in the capabilities of the current or right next administration, and CBDCs are not rolled out fully yet, we then might hyperinflate without a deflation. So that is my guess. So it's very hard to think, but I do believe something will snap within 7 years. But it might be actually we will still might be in the deflation area by then. But just like in physics, something in motion will tend to stay in motion. So the highest probability is that things tomorrow will be the same as they were today, right? So if you're it's a coin toss and you have a streak of heads, you tend to think that this will be tails because the probability is changing, right? But that doesn't mean that there will be another head. It can be another head for 26 in a row. So what you have to prepare is for both and all of the same time, basically. But if you are preparing for tomorrow will be the same as today with the same policies, with everything like that, and tomorrow and tomorrow and after that, up until 1 or 2 years, then some money can be made how people were making money during this inflation right now with real estate and so on. But if you don't think that, then that doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm trying to have different people from different perspectives onto the channel so you get to decide what you do, because I cannot tell you and I shouldn't tell you what you should do. But I can tell you what I'm doing, but I have different strategies that might not work for you. Starpath Academy, actually, it's more than a tool. It's just little Swiss knife. Restriction of movement, legalization, tax tracing, jurisdiction. Yes, it's more than one tool. What they have done in these last 2 years, and I think I'm saying that this is a test run. It's a test run of what are you people are okay with, and what you would still bear without something breaking, and then it's perfect because they can feel out certain states, certain populations, certain subgroups now with social media and tracking emotions and so on. It's so easy to track. Like, you roll out the restrictions and you know exactly you can track everything, right? One of the reasons why I sometimes ask, don't comment on this and I just post something, is because you have to understand YouTube is not a video platform. It's not a social platform. It's not a video sharing platform. It's a data collection operation. You have to know that. I mean, that at this point, everything that you use for free is a data collection operation. And do you want to feed that data? Well, good, feed it. I don't necessarily want you to feed your emotions into the machine, but if you want to do it, then feel free to do it. But do it on maybe someone else's channel. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you should like the channel. You should definitely like the videos. I'm saying that you should always be aware of that. Okay. So, and then, yeah. But also, I want to say this, though. Before I leave, and probably another question. Any system, software engineering or otherwise, is only as good as the data that is being fed into it. So, so no matter how much time and money and so on gets spent on the system, it will still be only as good as the data that it consumes. So you can kill the beast very easily, right? It's easy, but you have to do it in sync with many other people, I guess. And the trick is that junk in, junk out. If you feed the system with junk data, it will be a junk system. It will no longer be able to provide its value, right? If everyone right now today on Facebook would start liking completely or writing comments that are completely against their own views, as well as some comments that are completely with their views, following and sharing completely idiotic stuff on both ends, then Facebook would have no value at all to the ones that are using it, or are using it against you, I should say. Because it would be a junk in system and it could only produce junk, right? Junk in, junk out. So sometimes, I don't know if people should do it. I'm not saying should do it, but if someone would go crazy and start feeding this info to the system, then it would be it would need not be worthwhile to keep that system up. Okay. Yeah, I just like you guys too much. But it's getting late. 4 more minutes and I need to finish my tea. Yeah, so think about that. And after that, they only have force, and that's visible. And that's too visible. So they don't like to do that. It's cheaper to use other things than force. It's cheaper to enslave the mind than enslave the physical body. There's a good presentation about, I think there was a browser or something like that, a software that was providing some privacy. The presentation was about the panopticon. If you know about the panopticon, it's like a prison system, but it's like a circle. All the doors and windows face inwards, but there's a tower in the middle, and the tower can see in each and every cell, right? And the issue is that the cells, or the people in the cells, don't know if the person in the tower is looking right at you, because there's only a couple of people there and then hundreds of cells. But at any point in your mind, you could say, oh my God, he's watching, probably watching me, probably watching me. I should not do something. I should not do something bad. I should not escape. That's a panopticon. And what we have currently today is a big, big panopticon, right? So the problem with that is, or the issue with that is that it's not just you don't do something bad, but you build in your mind a system that makes a slave mentality or software running in your mind, that you are your own prison guard eventually. And that will change your thought patterns in order to not even think about things that you should not think about. And that is the scary part. It's not that you just won't do it. Eventually, since you can never do it, it will change the thought patterns in your mind. And that is actually physically, if you know neuroplasticity, okay, I can't say the word, but you know what. Okay, so that means your physical mind will actually change and alter behavior because of that. And that is the prison of the mind, and that is the prison of the system, where you think you're being watched even if you're not. But if you know that you could be watched, you will behave differently. So that was the case in communism, or whenever neighbors are ratting out other neighbors, and I could tell you stories about that. Well, that went from economy and hyperinflation to a totally different road, I guess. All right. Anybody one more question? Like the channel, only see 6 likes. I think there's like 47 likes, but you know, I just told you not to like the channel or like other channels or whatever. Like everything, just randomize the data. Yeah, no, it will help if you like the channel. So please like it and subscribe, but also hit the notification bell to all or something, because people did have problems with notifications. My own wife got unsubscribed from my channel, and yeah, whatever. So if you really like YouTubers, others as well, you should look into how RSS feeds work, and like have an RSS feed collector or something like that in your browser. And you can go to any YouTube channel and click the button that you want to subscribe to their RSS feed. And that is no longer, I mean, as long as the YouTube RSS feed works, you are no longer relying on YouTube notification system. As soon as something comes out, you will get an RSS feed update. Now, what happens is, like, you will get updates from every single video, and if you don't want that, then I mean, use this sparingly or have a filter on it or something like that. I might share some documentation how to do that, but it's super easy. It's like a plugin on Chrome or Firefox or one of those, and you just install the plugin and you go visit the actual YouTube channel in the URL or whatever, and then you hit the button and it will subscribe to that RSS feed or something. It works with other websites as well. It doesn't have to be YouTube, of course. But anyway. Okay. Hey, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the super chats. Absolutely amazing. I hope you know, you guys are doing well and financially well as well. Should I take another question? Yeah. Yeah, I'll take another question and then head. If no more questions, please repeat your question. I probably went through. Okay, I know one question that people wanted answered: taxes. So I cannot say, and this was again and again, real estate and taxes. Now, I believe in real estate and real estate investing, but there's a time for it, and it's that time is might be soon over. I don't know. Depends on whether we continue this rate or we do a deflation. So I'll talk a little bit about real estate. If you're planning to do real estate, what are some of my numbers that I'm thinking about? I'm not an advisor, but let's just talk about real estate taxes a little bit. So regarding real estate taxes, I cannot give you advice because of two reasons, right? I'm not a tax professional, and our situation in Romania was very different politically than what we have here. And but I can give you a couple of warnings. So stay the next couple of minutes or an hour. Okay, so here we go. Hyperinflation kicked in Romania starting with the revolution of 89. So that means Ceausescu got executed by the people, a new government formed. And that new government is very, very afraid of people repeating the same thing again and turning it into a civil war, because we were very close to a civil war. It actually sparked off as a civil war, but then factions, the rest of the faction of the army decided, well, let's not have a civil war. Let's just get rid of the dictator. But at some point, there was in Bucharest tanks shooting each other, because there was a situation like that. There was also the miners coming up to Timișoara and starting a civil war until they realized that these are not capitalist pigs trying to take over the country. They're actually fellow human beings trying to get a better system, or uh, not starve anymore. So eventually, the miners, who were actually people who were brought up multiple times from the southern Romania to be used against Transylvanian people from Timișoara, just ended up not doing it this time. So kudos for them. So they were very afraid of civil war, new revolution, and the plans not going according to plan, because it was sort of planned out at the top echelon, because the people who kind of made the coup against Ceausescu, against the communist ruler of Ceausescu, they ended up very wealthy this way. But if there would have been another revolution, that they might have been against that plan. So that means that they wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen. So putting high taxes on the people who are now okay with dying if necessary, but we want out of this system, was not a good idea. So taxes were never too much of a big problem for us, because government wanted to soften the blow as much as they could. And that was true whether it was when they could. And that was true with two things: taxes and water. As much as they could, they would try to have the water flowing, and high taxes not to be collected, and electricity failed all the time, but it was like there. Okay. So I cannot guarantee that would happen here, right? Who knows what the government that will be under hyperinflation or the coming collapse or something like that, what their plans are. Maybe they want that. Who knows? I don't know. So for that reason, taxes were not that big during the start or the worst part of the hyperinflation. It actually started coming back, creeping in more and more, but it did not keep up with inflation, because inflation just by nature is much faster than government actions, right? But that was also true when quote unquote help was provided. Whatever help or coupons or UBI was provided, it was of course not UBI, they're not called that. It was also not good enough by the time inflation hit. But also it was not digital and was not CBDCs. So it was lagging. But since my family did purchase property, apartment during hyperinflation, I told the story how and why, exactly how we did it. We knew, so that was taxed, but it was also rented. And that property was paid off completely with during hyperinflation. We didn't have any debt on that property, the one that we purchased then. And the rent that we collected at some point only covered the taxes. So that's your warning right there. If we would have had like a big mortgage or something like that, I don't know if we would have been able to keep it. Now, I think we would have, because the mortgage would have been locked in prior hyperinflation. Then hyperinflation hits, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal to pay the mortgage. But it really depends on the government action, what they take, right? Because taxes is a government tool, so what they want to do. But rent itself will be low, especially if it's in a big city. It will be just enough to pay the mortgage and probably not taxes, or just taxes or not the mortgage. So it depends on how you do it, but don't bet on rent being a huge income. And that was the case. If you read Weimar Times, or like books from written under Weimar Times or something like that, you'll know about rent, and you'll get the idea of what will happen. So I don't recommend like betting on, okay, you'll be able to live off of rent. And now with other actions, with moratoriums and so on, it's like totally different. No. When it comes to property, I like it property before hyperinflation kicks in, or before a huge deflation kicks in. You can shift property around, and you can consolidate not property not paid off by selling it and then paying property off. It's better before in a high inflation environment, not hyperinflation and not deflation, in just a regular high inflation environment that we have right now. It's, from my perspective, for myself, I'm not giving advice, it's better to have 5 properties not paid off, and then inflation making the payments in real terms, making it lower and lower and lower, but then you sell 4 and then you pay off 1, right? Instead of, and then you actually pay, actually, if you do the math, it depends on how much you have down, you can actually consolidate that into a couple of properties that you actually have paid off. But it's a risky game. I'm not saying you should play this. My risk tolerance is different than yours. You know, it's different. I'm not saying, it's there. It's there. I will interview people who did this or do this. If you want to know more about this, Robert Kiyosaki, about how to use other people's money, but also like on a personal level, I'm totally with Dave Ramsey. Like I don't want myself or my I don't want personal debt. I don't want debt on myself that I don't want to owe. Like I don't even have a credit card, right? But I'm fine with some entities owning some houses that I can manage and I'm learning or know what I'm doing, right? That's a different thing. But that I treat as investment that you might lose if you had your bets wrong. That's why as you soon as you start making money, you should start saving and you should start investing gold and silver and that sort of stuff. From my point of view, you do whatever you want to do, right? So it's different, but taxes can kill off these properties for sure. If you have them paid off, I don't think it will, because that would mean that everyone else will be dead by taxes. And usually that's not the case. Taxes are just an incentive device. They don't tax you because they need the money. They print the money. They tax you to incentivize. Eventually, I figured that out very soon, as soon as tax was put on tobacco, right? Now, is that for money? No, that's to incentivize not to use tobacco, right? That is, if you read modern monetary theory, they write it down on white and black. Taxes are to incentivize people for good and bad behavior. Now, good and bad behavior might be different than what you think good and bad behavior is, right? So watch out for that for sure. I don't think people will lose their paid off property to taxes. I think taxes will lag to inflation by a year or two, but in hyperinflation, that's a lot. I think if you can manage your property right outside of big city centers, I think you might be able to keep properties with mortgage, but you will have to take the initial blow of the first 2-3 years. I think 2 of inflation. That means if you can now have enough cash to keep up your properties without renters for 2-3 years, then you might be able to take the initial blow, or everybody else will be losing it. Then when everything hyperinflates and real estate will be super cheap because everybody is selling because they need food, then you can do 2 things. If you have enough whatever assets saved, gold or silver, Bitcoin, whatever you have, you can pick those properties up, but you can also pick your own property up now, right? Because you technically own a couple, but you have huge mortgages on it, which are not that huge now. So you can pick your own properties up and pay them off. These are all strategies. They might work, they might not work. Okay, so I'm not giving you advice. I'm telling you what's in my head, or some of it. So it's a different game, right? But taxes can be a huge burden. So watch out for that. Okay, I know that was a question a couple of times. So if you were with the live stream with me for 2 hours, I think you definitely deserve that an answer. And we can go into more details about taxes, but yeah, it will be hard. But I think if you're afraid of taxes, if you're afraid of hyperinflation, if you're afraid of deflation, if you're afraid of civil war, if you're afraid of war, you will end up never doing anything, and you have to pick what you're afraid of and then do the rest of the stuff, because if not, you will just stagnate wherever you are, and that's it. That's fine too. If you're fine with like that as a lifestyle, more power to you. Hopefully I can get to that point as well at some point. Yep. Taylor says I'm investing in Star Path Academy. Well, I don't know the return on that. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you, Judge Laszlo. Increasing taxes or binding taxes to carbon emission may lead to WEFs own nothing. Yeah, I think there's definitely it's incentives. I think it's a system of incentives. I have to look the book title up about modern monetary theory, but they say it's for incentivizing you not to breathe. No, it's incentivizing you not to do businesses. They want centralized stuff because in their perspective you're not efficient enough, so they want you to be a cog, but they want you to be very efficient, and then others should manage bigger stuff in business and that sort of stuff. And they want to get rid of small business and that sort of stuff because there's a lot of managers who they don't need. If they have a centralized system, they only need top level managers. Everything else is actually just automated and software and everything else, and you get to be your best self and everything will be provided for you. Yeah, good luck. But that's the theory anyway. So in this case, like in the market, we decide what's good, what's bad, how much we buy it for, and so on. And for people who don't like that, they see it as overhead, and they wanna get rid of that. And a lot of, to be honest, a lot of people who are for it don't know that they would be losing their jobs and their livelihood, because they will still need people who are honest and work for their living, which I'm hoping most of you guys. But then a lot of uppity city folk with the high paying jobs now, they would not need under a very centralized system. And centralized system do work. So in case if you have a centralized goal that you want to achieve, right? It's just humans are not always like that. So centralized system, or it works if you have one goal and one goal only, and everyone else is on the same page with that goal. Okay, let's turn the into a centralized country economy, centralized, but then let's land one person on Mars and everyone will do it, and we'll have like in 90 days we'll have a person on Mars or whatever. But what after that? Can we all agree on that? That's the problem with it. Like maybe you care more about feeding the poor instead of landing someone on Mars, right? That's the problem, that we all have our own opinions of what life should be and how life should be run. So that's why in order to go into the system, well, they need to change you first in order to think differently, because the problem is with you, not the system, not the goals. It's with you because you are not the best cog in the machine. So now you're being changed. Say hello to COVID. There. Questions. Do you allow clipping parts of the video? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I mean I say crazy stuff and you clip it out, and it could be hell. And then I have this problem of, I don't know. But hey, if you want that, then let me know and I can create the clip, or I could say okay. I don't know what's the best I feel like people will do it anyway. So I don't know if I even have a say in that. It would be nice to know if people are only nice people are doing that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I don't have an answer to that question. Well, I'm assuming you're a nice guy and you want to do it for the right reason. It's just the road to hell is paved with nice and good intentions. So I don't know. It's illegal to clip without permission. Perhaps sending you the clip for permission. I would say I'll make the clip. If you give, it's not like I have hundreds of people they want to do this. So if you send me the link to the video and send me the times that you want, I'll clip it. I even have a clipped a channel for clips. I just don't have the time for clipping because I don't know what you guys would like. But if you have like recommendations, I would actually really like that. If you could recommend clips that I could do, I would love that. And I'll clip it and I'll put it on the channel, on the other channel, which only has clips. And you could share it from there. I know it's, I don't know. Hopefully, eventually, I have people who I trust enough that I can just say, "Hey, you guys clip it." But yeah, let's just not let the monster out of the box, because if it's out, it's never going back. So I will say no. I don't allow clipping, but I will clip videos if you give me recommendations, and hopefully I can have more people who can take on recommendations, and those few people I will allow, but I don't have any people like that yet. Sorry guys, I mean the internet is a crazy place, so that's the best I can do for now, you know. Yeah, so yeah, but hey, your subscriptions is your name. A comment under this video when it comes out what you would like me to clip, and I'll make the clip. All right. Yeah, I'm trying to be as nice as I can without stepping in something bad. Yeah, so I hope you understand, by the way. I'm, you know, I kind of put it out why I'm saying no, so I hope you understand. Okay, last question, George Laszlo. Australia was first, then now Austria, Germany. Where will they continue? What do you think? I mean, mandatory stuff anywhere where they can. I mean, why should they stop? Yeah. I mean, I don't. I think it's again, it's the thermometer to measure what people are willing to force other people into. So get this, it's not measuring you who are either pro or against something. I think they are counting how many people they can get to the point that they want to force other people to do something that they don't want. Because those are valuable people for them. So let's make a let's make a little fun out of this. So let's say there's a new law that everybody has to wear a wig, right? Absolutely everyone, especially Star Path Academy because he's bald. Okay, so new law comes out. There's forced wig wearing on the people, right? So is that good, bad? Who cares? No, I'm a tyrant, right? And I want to measure, of course, how many people are going with the law, how many people don't want to go with the law, but I want to measure how many people are useful for me. And those people are the ones, the third kind, that will force other people by ratting on them or social pressure and so on to force other people to wear the wig. Okay, so that's the useful people that are there, and that's why the regulations go into, I guess, agencies and that sort of stuff first, because you want to clean people out who are not like that. You want to make sure that people who are in agencies that can apply force, those are all the people that you want in there. So let me give you an example from communist Romania, okay? Cops. Back in communist Romania, they got rid of local cops. They got rid of um, policemen that were just Joe from the end of the street, really good guy cop. You know, everybody knew him, and everybody liked him, and his kid went to the same school as someone else's kid in the on the street, right? That's no useful. That's not very good useful person. No, that had to stop, one reason or another. What they wanted to do is a federal police, right? A federal police where every so often policemen, maybe even good-hearted people, are moved across the whole of Romania from one city into the next city, 6 months, a year, but they want to make sure that they don't get to form community with the people who are living in their community. They had to be secluded only to gather with other police families and so on, because that way they could ensure that when an order came down the line, they would have no empathy to the rest of the people in the community, and they would execute the order. That is valuable. That is what they wanted. So yeah, I can tell more about how policing was done under communism, but that was one of the first things. They wanted to get rid of regular police. They wanted the federal police, and the federal police was managed federally, well, not federally, but Romania wise, and they were made sure to have a weird life where they would never connect with the people who they had to police. So I hope that you understand like what needs to happen, how the cleaning of these agencies need to be done before something else could be rolled out. That's valuable for them. Whether you agree or you do wear the wig or you don't wear the wig, though, nobody cares. It's your head, it's your head, and you do what you want. And that's my point, of course. Well, I hope everybody had fun. I know I had. So yeah, yeah, but they overdid it. So I want to leave on a positive note, and the positive note is that whenever my grandmother was asked about communism, she did say that there was never a song that never ended. So, and she was right. So just because it feels like never ending to many, and it feels like it's gaining more and more control, that doesn't mean that it will never end, right? Ceausescu is smelling the roses from underneath the ground now, right? And a lot of people don't want that system back anymore, especially in Eastern Europe. So just because it felt like was never ending, it doesn't mean it didn't end. It just ended abruptly, and I think that will happen. So, yeah, there. If it will feel like, also, I want to say, when the rope is slipping, you have to grab it stronger. So that's an indicator if someone is grabbing rope stronger, that means that they feel like it's slipping. So maybe all these bad things that are, you from your perspective, that are happening is because they feel that their grip is slipping. So maybe it is slipping, and they can only grab it so hard. And once it's slipped, the probably the mask will slip, and we'll have a golden age. Don't be so fearful. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the future that even they provide will be better than what we have. Maybe we will be all be happy and own everything. All right. So let's leave it at that. Um, I like your positive spin with a song. Yes, yes, that was true. A lot of people said that there was never a song that never ended. Song keeps on going, but it will end. It will end. Hopefully, we'll live to see it. Okay, last question. How many hours? 2.5. Okay. What do you consider to be the impact of current states which are bringing lawsuits against the rules and refusing to implement? Well, I think states still have a lot of power in the United States, and we should keep it that way. Um, I think we should keep it that way, and I think that's the best for everyone because you might be totally fine with everything that's happening, and that's your right to be fine with that. And I salute you. There's nothing wrong with that. And I hope there will be a state in the US where you can live happy without fear, you know? So that's fine. And I think on the other hand, there will be people who will live in other states who will want life to be different. And I think that should be fine too. I think just because we have differences, it doesn't mean that, it has to come to the place where we're going against each other. There are states, there are counties, there are other things. As long as there's no force involved, who cares about what the other person is doing? They should have the freedom to have everything that they want without, of course, impeding on your freedoms. So I think states, you should, like, one of the best things you could do probably is to move to a state that you feel is representing you. And because I think it will keep on being like that for a long time. Whatever happens with anything that's going on now, you should move to a state that you feel that represents your values, and that is true one side or the other. You don't have to be like agreeing with me or disagreeing with me. I think that's just it will make life easier for you because you feel more supported in what you believe in, and your belief might be totally different than mine, and it's fine. So I would suggest that, but also try to make a community there, because if not, if you're leaving a community that you have right now in the state that you might not enjoy 100%, but you have a really good community, if something might happen tomorrow and you don't have that community anymore, it would be very hard. So if you leave, then make sure you build that community very fast. And to be honest, it's hard to build a community. It's one of the hardest things. But like, people ask about gold and silver, the first thing you should do if you're truly a believer is move to a state that has laws where gold and silver is counted as money, right? The word doesn't come to me, but yeah. So where it's not taxed and you can use it as money, right? Legal tender. Thank you, M Dog. Thank you very much. Legal tender. That's the word. If you believe in that, if you believe in something else, it's pick your laws and pick your states, and make friends. You know. Yes, the values do change, but I think I know this will be crazy, and we'll end it on this note. I do believe that places have spirits, in the sense that a lot of, and we'll take it weird. It's late. I still have some tea. This will be the weirdest stuff. So you should probably leave now. Like the video first. But I do believe that places themselves have spirits, in the sense of the people who lived there for a long time kind of established something there. And when somebody goes into that new place, also with the community spirit, they have a high chance of changing, because they are now in a different pool of water and they get to experience. When that doesn't happen is when large groups come in and they make their own little smaller communities. But even that gets dissolved eventually into the larger pool. It just takes time. But it does happen. And of course, this is a theory, right? I'm working on it. Different book. But when you move there and you get to feel what they are living in and how they are living, you get dissolved into that spirit. And yes, you might change, but I think it will change back to where it was before once everything has been dissolved. But this also might take multiple generations. I think multiple generations need to pass in order to for this to fully be accomplished. So I think the founding fathers knew that. I think that is exactly why they wore Native American dresses when they rebelled against the United Kingdom, against the kingdom, because now they show that we are a different spirit, right? We are now the spirit of the natives here, right? So I think that has something to say, right? We are no longer part of the kingdom. And because, to be honest, I believe that a lot of the freedoms, that the freedom mentality that comes from the US comes from the Native Americans, that they wanted to live how they wanted to live. And people from Europe kind of came here and then adopted that spirit. But they also had the inclination to adopt that spirit, because people who left Europe didn't want to live under what they lived in. Now, again, we don't want to go into history and what happened. But I do believe that you should not be too much afraid. Just live together with the spirit of the land a little bit. Okay. So, yes, there is a spirit of the state, spirit of the land. It will change, but it will change back. And it might be different, and you need to be mobile and respect the spirit of the land and respect the spirit of the people. And you will have a happier life, I believe. All right. We'll end it on that note. This was fun. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.